I wonder if when you were a child, you had a book like this and found it fascinating. It's a book of pictures that seem to be just random designs, but the longer you look into the picture, more hidden faces, animals, peoples appear in the picture. At first sight, it's an ordinary pattern, but look again and see what you can see here. Oh goodness, and look what's there. And then you look again and you can see more and more, hidden below the surface in what seems to be familiar and very ordinary. Well, whether you had a book like that as a child or not, something happened at the beginning of 2018, the end of January, beginning of February, that was a little bit more sophisticated than a design that hides pictures below the surface. If you've been watching the series, you'll remember this one. This was number 3 when we talked about climate change. And we began with the rain stick this one came from Mexico, and how this was also part of the Mayan Indian tradition. And we talked about the tall grass, dry grass on plains waiting for rain, and the first sound of the wind moving the dry grass that gave rise to the name Chak, who became the god who brings the much needed rain. Water is life. And so, you may not have been interested in the Mayan tradition, and therefore you might just have missed this piece of information at the beginning of the year 2018. The Mayan civilization was a dominant society in Mesoamerica for centuries, but then it was lost. Archaeologists have been searching and searching and searching. And in one particular area in Guatemala, they've been searching in a jungle area for at least 100 years, going on foot through the dense vegetation, trying to learn something about the Mayan civilization that once was so vibrant there. Remember, this is our family. And in January this year, we was given a map of discovery of some archaeologists. It was a vast network of structures, of houses, of temples, of roadways, which they had discovered underneath the jungle, underneath the rainforests. An unknown structure, vibrant city life that we had not known about and could not have seen. Well, how did they do it? Well, we're told that they did this with a new technique in laser scanning technology, LIDAR, it's called, light detection and ranging. They did it by, from the air, flying over and over and over 800 miles of the rainforest and aiming laser pulses down at the surface of the rainforest. Very rapidly, they said. Well, rapid for them meant 150,000 pulses per second. Well, they did this, and then they measured the time it took from the light of those pulses to return into their very sophisticated equipment. They flew over and over and over hundreds of times, and then spent months of computer modelling until in the end they had stripped away 500,000 acres of jungle and could reveal the city that lay beneath it, which was once part of the vibrant life on this planet. Interesting. But not more than that. I mean, unless you're very interested in history, and if you have woken up now to the fact that there were civilizations that we have lost contact with, but are part of our world history, and these were massive civilizations. We're told that what they can now see of the Mayan city under the Guatemalan jungle and rainforest was in actual fact twice the size of medieval England. So we're really recovering an enormous part of our world family's history. Of course, you may be saying, well, ancient history, modern technology, because if you're not interested in the history, at least take note of the technology that we are now able to create and to use for our service. Ancient history and contemporary technology. What could they possibly have as a message for the spiritual journey we are making now? Well, we have to return again to our original wisdom, back to the Vedas. And they tell us quite simply what we have to do is get below the surface. Return within, to the place where there is nothing. Penetrate to the depth of yourself, to the place where thought no longer exists. And there, in the place where there is nothing, is fullness. Okay? So we've had the advice for a long time. Return within. We live this life in space-time journey, as we know, different levels of consciousness. The physical, the psychological, the outer, the inner, and then the innermost world. The world of spiritual experience, spirit to spirit, a place where nothing exists, where time does not exist, where thought does not exist. Penetrate to the depth of yourself. This human, psycho-human body is only here for a short time, no matter how many years. It's gone. That's not the purpose of the journey. The purpose of the journey is the discovery of the self within. Returning to the place where there is nothing. No, nothing. Just the opposite. No thing. Where the transitory reality of space-time, planet, universe, or how many universes we might yet discover, are all part of the nothing. But once we discover that, we discover the source, we discover the fullness, we discover our meaning and purpose and why we're here and what it's all about. Look again at that civilization. The Maya were so very important to the history of our family on this planet. What happened? How great were they? What difference did it make to our history in our particular country? It made a difference, and it still makes a difference, to the history, the family story of all of us. And realize that we might never have known that unless we had developed the type of technology, the laser technology, which we have now in our hands. And how incredible it is that we can strip away the rainforests and the jungle and see beneath to the ruins of a city, an area that was half the size of medieval England, with laser pulses aimed at the surface of the jungle. And then, of course, we knew how to do the decoding afterwards. Amazing, the world we live in. And it brings us back to the whole purpose of being here. We have to do this sort of laser scanning on our own everyday life. Return within, to the reality, to the source that we've forgotten. And realize that everything we hold as so important, in actual fact, does not have a reality that goes beyond space-time. And when we discover this, we haven't really discovered emptiness. For the first time, we've discovered the fullness of life. Life in all its fullness. Beyond the surface. Every day to be able to go beyond the surface concerns, the transitory goals, the unsatisfied desires, the haste, the confusion, the unreal. Do we need a new technology to do this? No. We've got more than enough technology to do this. From our earliest awakening to our spiritual reality, the reality beyond space-time, the ultimately real, we have discovered ways of helping ourselves to wake up to what lies below, what exists when everything else is finished. And all our mystics, in all our traditions, have shown us that those methods are very simple, but they do work. Century after century, in every culture, in every part of our planet, there have been those who have used these very simple methods. Very simple. Far less complicated than aiming laser beams at 150,000 per second and then having all the decoding work to do. We've been looking at some of that technology during this series. We've been looking at the practices. If you like, you can think of them as laser technology that reveals the innermost depths of ourselves. Very simple indeed, extremely effective and vitally important. So let's have a look at one again. Questions to go. Well, we've already touched on some of them, but the main question for this month is quite simply, how awake am I to the impact of contemporary technological advances on my everyday life? Do I read about them? Do I watch them on television? Or do I simply avoid them? You know, I finished being a student. What use is it all to me anyway? Question is, can I wake up to lifelong learning? If we're really living our life with any degree of enthusiasm and enjoyment at all, every day is a learning situation. We never stop learning. The topic is vast. We'll never have mastered it. And in some countries, we have been able to realize that this is very important for us as a human society. And there are countries where they have now what they call the University for the Third Age, so that when people have retired from their jobs, their work, their professions, they don't stop learning. They do exactly what we said. Look very seriously at all the technological advances and discoveries that we have in our world, and learning how they are affecting me, life of humanity, and the spiritual journey. Just have a look at them. You may have an open university in your area, using the media, the TED lectures, the Newton series. Look at them. In every country they're available. Even in a very remote part of Ethiopia, in Africa, a whole area received its education through iPads. And teachers miles away that they will never be in contact with. In areas where they had no schools and no formal education system at all. Are you eager to learn, even more eager to learn now than perhaps when you were a child? Now, that's the first thing. Wake up. Things are going on that I should know about and reflect deeply on. It's the reflecting on my new learning that is really important. Do I talk it over with someone? Do I share it? Do I make a particular effort, if I've got the opportunity, to ask questions of those who are much younger than I am and find out their reactions and share mine? The question, therefore, for the month is this: can I approach my innermost spiritual journey in a new way? Can I change the way I nourish it, finding that all the advances in society are nourishment for my inner journey? Not only traditional religious practices. Have a look. That is the question for this month. A very personal one, but the answer can be amazingly effective in giving me a new approach, a new sustenance, things to sustain my innermost spiritual journey through life, to life in all its fullness. When we entered the reflection, we asked if we needed new technology, comparable to the laser scanning technology, in order to get really below the surface of our everyday lives, to do what the Vedic tradition told us was our main task, to return within, where there was nothing, no thought, no images, so that we could reach the ultimate reality, the fullness of life. And I said, no, we don't need any new technology to do this. We have plenty of technology that works very effectively. And all through the centuries, in different cultures and countries and religious traditions, mystics have proved to us that these very simple methods work. They penetrate beyond the depth, beyond the surface of our everyday psychophysical existence into the spiritual reality, which we cannot see, but which is there and is ultimately the only real. And so, here we're coming with another one of those very simple practices, bits of technology that can help us to penetrate to the depth of ourselves. Some of us are helped more by words than by images, but some of us are visualizers. And although we can understand the purpose and the effectiveness of repetition of words, whether we do it verbally or whether we do it in our minds, using beads in our hands or twisting a ring on our fingers, you can go back and look at the practices that have been suggested, and hopefully you have tried. But if you are a visualizer, you need something else which is perhaps more effective for you. Now, just as ancient as the japa, the repetition of the name, is the use of design. The ancient tradition of using mandalas has been made very popular in more recent years by the Dalai Lama. And if you have looked this up on Google, and perhaps you might like to if you haven't done before, you'll see that mandalas are numerous. There are hundreds of different mandalas, designs, each of which is supposed to have a particular significance for some aspect of our lives. Now, the Tibetan tradition is rather elaborate in its use of mandalas, and popular commercialism, I'm afraid, has added to it. We have to strip away all the addition and come down to what was the original simple practice. The mandala is not a picture. It's extremely simple. It's a geometric design. It is meant to attract the attention of our eyes, and we use it quite simply by focusing on the edge and letting our eye travel round the edge of the design, circular, and inwards and inwards and inwards until we come to the center. Then we go back the same way. The eye movements have to be slow and relaxed and carefully focused. Now, if you have been watching and learning about some of these ancient methods or techniques, technologies for returning within, you realize there are certain simple, basic things that are important for all of them. One of them is that you use them slowly, that you must be relaxed and focused in your attention. No, you're just looking at a picture and have your mind talking about it. Your eyes must go slowly from the outer to the innermost and then back again, slowly, with fixed attention and relaxed. And at some point, everything will slow down and you will remain focused in the stillness. And in exactly the same way as when you're using the beads and repeating a word, when they stop into the silence, you stay there. But when you discover the mind is starting to chat again, you begin again. The circular movement runs through all these practices, as does the importance of moving slowly, relaxed, in a gentle, with firm attention. Think of the labyrinth, walking the labyrinth, from the edge, following the path, into the center, and then out again, the same way, going more and more slowly, stopping when the movement within ceases, until you are disturbed and you begin again. So the mandala is a geometric design, very simple, but one that's designed to take our attention inwards to the center, so that we can come outwards again slowly. Now, if you look at the popular mandalas that are produced as birthday cards and so on today in Western society, they'll be using horses and people and all sorts of pictures. It isn't a mandala, and it should be nowhere near as elaborate as the mandalas that are used now in the Tibetan tradition. But as you possibly have encountered mandalas through the work of the Dalai Lama, I just want to make reference to them. These mandalas are extremely complex designs. They're drawn, first of all, on the ground or on paper, and then the design is filled in with coloured sand. This requires very careful attention, no disturbing movement at all, is painstakingly difficult to do, and the mandalas that are associated with the Dalai Lama take hours and days to produce. There's a picture here of the Dalai Lama completing the most famous of these mandalas, the Kala Chakra mandala. It's the Wheel of Time mandala, and he's just beginning. You can see it drawn, the pattern drawn. You can see how carefully he is bent over the design as he puts the first few grains of coloured sand in place. You can see that one of his disciples and helpers is making sure that his robes don't fall on the picture and disturb the sand, and the others who are watching have their mouths covered in case they should breathe too heavily and blow the sand away. It's elaborate, it's complicated, it takes hours and days and a massive amount of attention. The Kala Chakra mandala, the Wheel of Time. This one comes from something else that is familiar to you, the ancient wisdom, and I've mentioned it just now, that we live our journey in space-time in an outer world, an inner world, and an innermost world. And in this innermost world, we encounter nothing, because we found fullness. We need nothing because there is everything. There is the source. God is the most familiar name for us. There where we encounter God in God's mystery, nothing else exists. And so, here it is, a mandala, the Kala Chakra mandala. But I'm suggesting that you go back to the original idea of mandala. You may not find one easy to get, but you might find somebody who could paint one for you, or you might try drawing one for yourself. Or something else would be to find one in nature. You know, it could be as simple as the daisy, or any flower that has the same structure as a daisy, or but has layers of petals. So you start at the outer layer and move inward and to the centre, and you come out and out and out. Or seed pods when they're opened. Be creative. Go and explore. If you are a visualizer, if you are a person who paints and draws or uses a camera, you are a visualizer. So go out into your world and discover where the mandalas are in nature. It has to be simple. It has to capture your attention. And it needs to be able to lead you from the outer to the inner to the innermost. And if you have to go back out because you haven't relaxed enough or gone slowly enough, it will still bring you back to the center. So that is the mandala. A genuine mandala. Find one in nature, draw one, read about the tradition. Don't get lost either in the, I think, very elaborate Tibetan tradition of mandalas, but a very sincere tradition, because notice what they do with this mandala. Having spent days of painstaking work to produce this design with coloured sand, many of them working at the same time, what do they do with it? They throw it away. Where it's possible, where the Kala Chakra mandala with the Dalai Lama has been drawn, people have the chance of looking at it. But then those who have produced it simply pick it up and brush it away. If there's a river, they take it down to the river and they brush it away in the river. No way of even rescuing the sand that was used. It's all gone. It served its purpose. It's part of the outermost inner journey, but once it's taken you to the innermost, it's not needed. Let it go. So elaborate though these mandalas are, their main message is space-time is so fast, it's not the essential. It's getting beyond it. Return within to the place where there is nothing. Go below the surface of thought, of action. So much to learn, lifelong learning. Don't ignore technology. Technology is part of contemporary spiritual practice. We need to watch it and then to choose the simple methodology that we've had since the beginning. It's still effective, it still works, and it requires the minimum of instruments or equipment or places to be. It's just simple, everyday life. Pausing when you've seen something. Before you put the remote control down after watching something on television about political situation somewhere, violence, children being abused, watching children screaming because of the results of acid or chemical warfare, and feeling your whole person react either in judgment or in compassion or in both. The pause to look at that again for yourself. These are the practices of everyday life. So enjoy them and enjoy the world we live in. The technology is amazing. And yes, there's an enormous amount to learn, but we mustn't stop. Go on learning. That's spiritual practice.